The millionaire organized a grand event to find a wife, but throughout the night, he realized that the woman he truly wanted by his side had always been in his own home, his maid. The Grandview Hotel's ballroom sparkled like a jewel in the San Francisco night. Crystal chandeliers reflected the light in 1,000 facets, creating an atmosphere of opulence and expectation. The guests, dressed in their finest gala attire, circulated around the space, glasses of champagne in hand and curious glances in search of the evening's host. Alexander Rothschild, the city's most coveted bachelor, had organized what the local press called the event of the century. At 35, the young tech tycoon had decided it was time to find a wife, and nothing short of a fairy tale ball would do for the occasion. Meanwhile, miles away, in the Rothschild mansion in the hills of Pacific Heights, a solitary figure watched the final preparations for the event through a television screen in the kitchen. Olivia Thompson, the housekeeper for almost a decade, sighed as she watched the images of the ballroom being decorated and the presenters' animated comments about the bachelor billionaire's ball. Olivia, a 32-year-old woman with brown hair always tied back in a discreet bun, switched off the TV and turned her attention to the task in hand. She was preparing a light meal for the team that would be on duty at the mansion during Alexander's absence. Her movements were precise and efficient, the result of years of practice and dedication. As she chopped some vegetables, Olivia couldn't help but let her mind wander to the man she knew better than any of those stunning women at the ball. Alexander wasn't just her boss. Over the years, he had become a friend, someone with whom she shared frank conversations about books, politics, and the small details of everyday life. She remembered the first time she saw him, a young entrepreneur fresh out of college, full of ideas and energy. Olivia was among the first employees hired for the new mansion, and from the start, they established a relationship of mutual respect. Alexander valued her efficiency and discretion, while Olivia appreciated the way he treated all the employees with kindness and consideration. The sound of footsteps interrupted her thoughts. Margaret, the cook, entered the kitchen with a smile on her face. "Oh, Olivia, you wouldn't believe what I've just heard on the radio," Margaret said excitedly. "It seems that Mr. Rothschild has invited practically every eligible bachelorette on the West Coast. Rumor has it there are even a few celebrities on the guest list." Olivia forced a smile. "That's exciting," she replied, trying to sound enthusiastic. "I hope he finds someone special." Margaret tilted her head, studying Olivia's face for a moment. "Are you all right, dear? You look a bit down." "I'm fine," Olivia replied quickly. "Just a bit tired with all the preparations for tonight." The cook nodded, not entirely convinced. "Well, at least we'll have a quiet evening here. How about we watch a movie after we've finished our chores? We can make popcorn and pretend we're at our own ball." Olivia laughed softly. "That sounds great, Margaret." "Thank you." Meanwhile, at the Grandview Hotel, Alexander Rothschild was adjusting his bow tie in front of the mirror in a private suite. His reflection showed a tall, well-groomed man with carefully combed dark hair and green eyes that conveyed a mixture of confidence and unease. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves. The prom hadn't been his idea, but that of his PR team and his company's board of directors. A strategic wedding could solidify your image as a stable and reliable leader, they argued. Alexander gave in, more out of exhaustion than conviction. A discreet knock on the door brought him out of his thoughts. It was Richard, his personal assistant. "Mr. Rothschild, everything is ready. The guests are looking forward to meeting you." Alexander nodded. "Thank you, Richard. I'll be there in a moment." When the assistant left, Alexander picked up the phone and for a brief moment, thought about calling the mansion. He could almost hear Olivia's calm, reassuring voice on the other end of the line, offering words of encouragement as she always did before important events. But he held back. Tonight was about moving on, about finding someone to share his life with. He couldn't be forever dependent on the support of his housekeeper. With one last look in the mirror, Alexander put his phone back in his pocket and headed for the door. The corridor leading to the main hall seemed endless. With every step, he felt the weight of expectations on his shoulders. Family members, shareholders, the media. Everyone expected him to choose a wife tonight, as if it were a simple business transaction. As he approached the ballroom doors, Alexander paused. For a moment, he thought of Olivia and the quiet dinner they could be sharing in the mansion's kitchen, discussing the latest book they had both read. He shook his head, pushing the image away. It was time to face his destiny. The doors opened, and an explosion of light, music, and voices enveloped him. Hundreds of faces turned towards him, eyes bright with curiosity and anticipation. Alexander forced a smile and entered the hall, ready to play the role of San Francisco's most desirable bachelor. Little did he know that, as he walked between smiles and greetings, his heart remained in the quiet mansion in Pacific Heights, together with the only person who really knew and appreciated him for who he was, beyond his name and fortune. The ball had begun, and with it, a journey of self-discovery that would lead Alexander Rothschild to question everything he thought he knew about love, status, and the true meaning of happiness. The Grandview Hotel ballroom buzzed with the energy of hundreds of guests, all orbiting around Alexander Rothschild like planets around a reluctant sun. Practiced smiles and calculated laughter filled the air, mingling with the clink of crystal goblets and the soft murmur of the orchestra. Alexander navigated the crowd with the grace of someone used to the spotlight, but his green eyes betrayed a restlessness that few noticed. Every handshake, every superficial conversation, every unsolicited look of admiration made him feel more and more like an actor on an elaborate stage. "Alexander, darling," a shrill voice cut through the hubbub. Cassandra Beaumont, heiress to a cosmetics fortune, made her way towards him, her red dress as eye-catching as a bullfighting flag. "This event is simply divine. You must tell me all the details of how you planned it." He forced a smile. "Actually, Cassandra, I had little involvement in the planning. My team took care of everything." "Oh, but of course," she laughed, touching his arm possessively. "A busy man like you doesn't have time for such trivialities. That's why you need a woman in your life to take care of those details." Her words hit him like a punch in the gut. It was exactly the kind of comment that made him question the whole purpose of this event. His thoughts momentarily flew to Olivia, who ran her household with efficiency and discretion, never seeking credit or attention. "If you'll excuse me," Alexander muttered, turning away from Cassandra and heading for the bar. He needed a moment to pull himself together. Meanwhile, at the Rothschild mansion, Olivia was finishing organizing the kitchen after the team dinner. She glanced at the clock, 9:30 p.m. The ball would be in full swing by now. She found herself wondering how Alexander was doing, if he had found someone who captured his genuine interest. "Olivia," Margaret's voice snapped her out of her reverie. "The movie's about to start. Are you coming?" Olivia hesitated. I think I'll stay the night, Margaret. I have a few things to finish here." The cook studied her for a moment, understanding softening her features. "You know, dear, sometimes what we're looking for is right under our noses, and sometimes it's on the other side of a barrier we think we can't cross." Olivia felt her face heat up. "I don't know what you're talking about, Margaret." The older woman smiled gently. "Of course not, dear. Good night, then." Alone in the kitchen, Olivia let out a shaky sigh. Were her feelings really that transparent? She walked over to the window, looking out at the city lights in the distance. Somewhere out there, Alexander was possibly meeting the woman who would become his wife. The thought made her heart squeeze. Back at the Grandview Hotel, Alexander found refuge on a small balcony away from the main hall. The cool San Francisco night air was a welcome relief from the stifling heat of the lounge. "Running away from your own party?" A soft voice surprised him. He turned to find a dark-haired woman with intelligent eyes, watching him with an understanding smile. She wasn't dressed as extravagantly as the other guests, wearing a simple navy blue dress that stood out for its understated elegance. "Just a breather," Alexander replied, puzzled that he didn't recognize her. "I'm sorry, but I don't remember us being introduced." "That's because we weren't," she laughed softly. "I'm Sophia Lawson. I'm actually a journalist. I'm covering the event for the San Francisco Chronicle." Alexander felt a mixture of relief and disappointment. Here was someone who wasn't trying to impress or win him over. "So, Miss Lawson, what do you think of the event of the century?" Sophia tilted her head, considering. "Honestly, it sounds more like an elaborate business transaction than a search for true love. But who am I to judge?" Perhaps love can flourish even in the most artificial circumstances. Her words struck Alexander like a ray of clarity amidst the fog of confusion that had enveloped him since the beginning of the evening. "You're more perceptive than most reporters I know, Ms. Lawson. Please call me Sophia," she smiled. "And you? What does the famous Alexander Rothschild think about all this?" He hesitated, considering whether he should be honest with a journalist. Something in her eyes, however, encouraged him. I'm beginning to question whether I really know what I want." Sophia nodded understandingly. "Sometimes, Mr. Rothschild, what we're looking for is already in our lives, just waiting for us to notice it." Her words echoed Margaret's to Olivia, creating a strange synchronicity between the two places. Alexander felt a sudden urge to return home, to the familiar comfort of his mansion and Olivia's reassuring presence. "Thanks for the talk, Sophia," he said, feeling lighter than he had all night. "You've given me a lot to think about." While Alexander prepared to return to the salon and fulfill his duties as host, Olivia, at the mansion, made a decision. She couldn't go on pretending that her feelings for Alexander were purely professional, but she also knew that she could never act on them. The social gulf between them was too great. With a resigned sigh, Olivia began to write a letter of resignation. It would be better for everyone if she walked away before her feelings complicated things further. Silent tears fell onto the paper as she wrote, each word a piece of her heart being left behind. The evening progressed, and both Alexander and Olivia faced crossroads in their lives. An elaborate ball and a simple letter of resignation, two seemingly unconnected events, were about to trigger a series of events that would change their lives forever. The clock in the Rothschild mansion struck midnight when the sound of tires on the circular driveway broke the silence of the night. Olivia, who had been sitting in the kitchen contemplating her newly written letter of resignation, stood up abruptly. Alexander shouldn't be back so soon. She quickly folded the letter and tucked it into her apron pocket, her heart racing as she heard familiar footsteps approaching. The kitchen door opened, revealing Alexander, his bow tie loosened around his neck and an expression of relief on his face at seeing her. "Olivia," he breathed, as if he had run a marathon. "I was hoping to find you awake." "Mr. Rothschild," she replied, trying to keep her composure. "You came back early. Is everything all right?" Alexander ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Olivia knew well. He was nervous. "Actually, no. Yes, everything's fine, but—" He paused, taking a deep breath. "Olivia, I need to talk to you." The tone of his voice made her heart leap. "Of course, sir. Would you like me to make you some tea?" He shook his head. "No, thank you. Actually, I'd like us to sit in the living room, if you don't mind." Olivia followed him, her mind racing with possibilities. Had he met someone at the ball? Would she be relieved of her services? In the elegant living room, Alexander gestured for her to sit on the sofa, while he stood, pacing back and forth. "Olivia," he began, stopping to look at her. "How long have you been working for me?" 9 years, sir," she replied softly. He nodded, as if confirming something for himself. 9 years, and in all that time you've been more than just an employee. You've been a friend, a confidant. Olivia felt her face heat up. "You've been very kind to me, Mr. Rothschild." "Alexander," he corrected gently. "Please call me Alexander, at least tonight." She swallowed, feeling suddenly vulnerable. "Alexander," she repeated, the word sounding strange and intimate on her lips. He moved closer, taking a seat next to her on the sofa. "Olivia, tonight at the ball I had an epiphany. Surrounded by all those people, all those women who were supposed to be perfect for me, I could only think of one person." Olivia's heart seemed to want to leap out of her chest. She hardly dared to breathe. "I thought about you," Alexander continued, his green eyes fixed on hers. "About our conversations, about how you understand me better than anyone else. And I realized that what I was looking for was here all along." Olivia felt tears forming in her eyes. "Alexander, I don't know what to say." He took her hands in his. "Tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me you feel it too." For a moment, Olivia allowed herself to dream, but then reality hit her like a bucket of cold water. She gently withdrew her hands. Alexander, we can't. You're my boss. I'm your housekeeper. The outside world would never accept. The outside world doesn't matter, he interrupted passionately. What matters is what we feel. Olivia, I love you. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning and possibilities. Olivia felt her world spin. Everything she had secretly wanted was being offered to her. And yet, I love you too, she finally admitted, her voice almost a whisper. But love isn't always enough, Alexander. There are so many complications, so many obstacles. He stood up abruptly, pulling her with him. Then we'll face them together. Olivia, I've spent years building an empire, but only now have I realized that none of it makes sense without someone to share it with, and that someone is you. As they stared at each other, the air heavy with emotion, the sound of footsteps surprised them. Margaret entered the room, her eyes widening as she saw the scene before her. "Oh, I'm sorry," she stammered. "I heard voices and I thought—" "It's all right, Margaret," Alexander smiled, not letting go of Olivia's hand. "In fact, your arrival is timely. We have an announcement to make." Olivia looked at him in surprise. "Alexander, are you sure?" He nodded, his eyes shining with determination. "Absolutely." As Margaret watched them with a mixture of confusion and anticipation, Alexander turned to face Olivia fully. "Olivia Thompson," he said, his voice firm and full of emotion, "would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" The silence that followed seemed deafening. Margaret stifled a scream, her hands flying to cover her mouth. Olivia felt as if the world had stopped spinning. "Alexander, she began, her voice trembling. "This is crazy. You've just come back from a ball where you were supposed to find a suitable wife, someone of your social class, someone who—" He interrupted her gently. "Someone I love, and who loves me for who I am, not for what I have. Someone who truly knows me, and that person is you, Olivia." The tears Olivia had been holding back finally overflowed. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." Margaret let out a cry of joy, running to embrace them both. "Oh, I knew it. I always knew you were perfect for each other." While the three of them celebrated in the living room, the world outside continued to spin, oblivious to the revolution that had just taken place inside the Rothschild mansion. Alexander and Olivia knew there would be challenges ahead. The press, society, business. But at that moment, all that mattered was the love they had finally admitted. The resignation letter in Olivia's apron pocket was forgotten, a silent reminder of how life can change in an instant. The elaborate ball that should have been the start of a new life for Alexander turned out to be just that, but in a way that no one could have predicted. As the evening progressed, the three of them remained in the living room, discussing plans and dreaming of the future. A new journey was about to begin, one that would test Alexander and Olivia's love in ways they could barely imagine. The next morning dawned with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension at the Rothschild mansion. Alexander and Olivia, still enraptured by the events of the night before, were now facing the reality of their decisions. The shrill ring of the telephone broke the tranquility of breakfast. Alexander answered, his face becoming more serious by the second. "I understand, Richard. Yes, I'll be there in an hour." Olivia watched him intently. "Something wrong?" Alexander sighed, putting the phone back on the hook. "The news of our engagement leaked out. Apparently, someone on the team overheard our conversation last night and sold the information to the press. The tabloids are having a field day." Olivia's face paled. "Oh, God! Alexander, I'm so sorry. Maybe we should—" He interrupted her gently, taking her hands in his. "Don't you dare finish that sentence, Olivia. We knew it would happen eventually. It just happened faster than we expected." At that moment, Margaret rushed into the kitchen, a newspaper in her hands. "Have you seen this? It's all over the headlines." Alexander picked up the paper, his eyes quickly scanning the front page. The screaming headline read, "Billionaire swaps socialites for governor. True love or scandal?" Olivia felt her stomach turn. "That's awful. Alexander, your reputation." "My reputation doesn't matter," he said firmly. "What matters is the two of us, Olivia." I'm not going to let the press or anyone else break us up." Margaret, sensing the tension in the air, discreetly withdrew from the kitchen, leaving the couple alone. Alexander stood up, straightening his tie. "I have an emergency meeting with the company board. They're probably panicking about all this publicity." Olivia nodded, feeling helpless. "What should I do?" He smiled softly. "Be yourself, my love. Don't let anyone make you feel inferior. You're the woman I chose, and there's nothing to be ashamed of." With a quick kiss, Alexander left, leaving Olivia alone with her thoughts and worries. Hours passed, and the mansion was besieged by reporters and photographers. Olivia watched from the window, feeling like a caged animal. The phone kept ringing, with journalists trying to get an exclusive statement. It was in the middle of this confusion that the doorbell rang. Margaret, who had taken on the role of guardian of the house, cautiously answered. To everyone's surprise, it was Sophia Lawson, the journalist Alexander had met at the ball. "Miss Thompson?" Sophia called out, entering the living room where Olivia was hiding. "I know you must be feeling overwhelmed, but I'd like to talk to you. No recorders, no cameras, just a chat." Olivia hesitated, but something in the sincerity in Sophia's eyes made her agree. "All right, Miss Lawson, what do you want to know?" Sophia smiled gently. "First, call me Sophia, and secondly, I want to know the truth. Not what the tabloids are saying, but your story. How you and Alexander really fell in love." For almost 2 hours, Olivia opened up to Sophia. She talked about the years working for Alexander, the conversations they shared, the moments of mutual understanding. She talked about her doubts, her fears, and the overwhelming joy of finally admitting her feelings. Sophia listened attentively, occasionally asking questions, but mostly letting Olivia lead the narrative. When Olivia had finished, Sophia closed her notebook and smiled. "Thank you for trusting me, Olivia. Your story is beautiful and deserves to be told properly. With your permission, I'd like to write an article presenting your side of the story." Olivia hesitated. "What if it makes things worse?" Sophia shook her head. "Sometimes the best defense against rumors and speculation is the simple, honest truth. Let people see the true love behind the sensationalist headlines." Before Olivia could reply, the front door opened abruptly. Alexander walked in, looking exhausted but determined. His eyes widened at the sight of Sophia. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice tense. Olivia stood up, walking over to him. "It's all right, Alexander. Sophia came to hear our story, the real story." Alexander looked from Olivia to Sophia, his expression softening. "And you told her?" Olivia nodded. "I told her everything, Alexander. I think we should let her write the article. People deserve to know the truth about us." He was silent for a moment, considering. Finally, with a sigh, he agreed. "Fine. But on one condition. I want to read the article before it's published." Sophia smiled, holding out her hand. "Deal. I promise to do your story justice." As Sophia said goodbye and left, Alexander pulled Olivia into a tight hug. "It's been a hard day," he murmured into her hair. "The board isn't happy, the shareholders are nervous, and my phone won't stop ringing." Olivia pulled away slightly, looking into his eyes. "Do you regret it?" Alexander smiled, gently touching her cheek. "Not for a second. We'll get through this together, Olivia. I promise." As the sun set over San Francisco, casting long shadows through the mansion's windows, Alexander and Olivia remained embraced, facing together the storm they had unleashed. The road ahead would be difficult, full of obstacles and challenges, but they were determined to prove that their love was stronger than any adversity the world could throw at them. Sophia's article would be just the first step on a journey to change perceptions and break down barriers. The real battle was just beginning, but for the first time in their lives, both Alexander and Olivia felt truly ready to face whatever the future held. The weeks following the revelation of Alexander and Olivia's engagement were a roller coaster of emotions and challenges. Sophia Lawson's article in the San Francisco Chronicle had brought a more human and sympathetic perspective to their love story. However, not even Sophia's carefully constructed narrative was enough to completely calm the turbulent waters the couple were facing. It was a Wednesday morning when Alexander entered the kitchen, his face tense and tired. Olivia, who was preparing breakfast, immediately realized that something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked, placing a cup of strong coffee in front of him. Alexander sighed heavily. "The board is demanding an emergency meeting. Some of the more conservative shareholders are threatening to sell their shares. They think that our relationship, that you, are a distraction to the business." Olivia felt her heart sink. "Alexander, I never wanted to cause problems for your company. Maybe we should—" "Don't even think about it," he interrupted her firmly, taking her hands. "We've already talked about this. I'm not going to let a bunch of prejudiced old men dictate my personal life." At that moment, Margaret entered the kitchen, carrying a pile of mail. "Good morning, lovebirds. More letters for you." Alexander picked up the envelopes, flipping through them quickly. His expression changed from frustration to surprise and then to a warm smile. "Olivia, look at this," he said, handing her some of the letters. She took them, her eyes roaming over the handwritten words. They were letters of support, dozens of them. People from all corners of the country writing to express their admiration for their love, sharing their own stories of relationships that defied social expectations. "This is amazing," Olivia murmured, tears forming in her eyes. Alexander smiled, hugging her from behind. "See? Not everyone is against us. There are people who understand, who support us." Margaret, who had been watching the scene with a smile on her face, sniffled softly. "If I may be so bold, I think you two should do something about it." "What do you mean?" Olivia asked, turning to face her. "Well," Margaret began, "you have a platform now. People are paying attention. Why not use it to do something good?" Alexander was thoughtful for a moment. "You know what? Margaret's right. We can turn all this attention into something positive." Over the next few hours, Alexander and Olivia worked together, devising a plan. They decided to create a foundation, the Rothschild Foundation for Equality and Opportunity. The aim would be to provide scholarships and job opportunities for people from disadvantaged backgrounds, helping to break down the social barriers they themselves were facing. With renewed energy and purpose, Alexander set off for the board meeting. Olivia, determined not to stand still, decided to take the next step in her own journey. "Margaret," she called out, "can you help me get ready? I think it's time I faced the press." Margaret smiled proudly. "Of course, darling, let's make you shine." Hours later, Olivia found herself in front of a sea of microphones and cameras at the entrance to the Rothschild mansion, dressed in an elegant navy blue suit, a careful choice to project confidence and professionalism. She took a deep breath before beginning. "Good afternoon, everyone." Her voice was firm, despite the nervousness she felt inside. "My name is Olivia Thompson, and yes, I am engaged to Alexander Rothschild, but that's not all I am." She paused, her eyes scanning the crowd of journalists. "I'm a woman who has worked hard all her life, who values integrity, compassion, and mutual respect. And it is with these values that I intend to move forward, not just as Alexander's future wife, but as a partner in every way." The questions came in floods, but Olivia faced them with grace and honesty. She talked about her years working at the mansion, how she and Alexander gradually grew closer, and their plans for the new foundation. "We believe that love can transcend social barriers," she concluded, "and we want to use our story to inspire positive changes in society." Meanwhile, at Rothschild Tech's headquarters, Alexander was facing his own battle. In front of the board, he presented not only the plans for the foundation, but also a bold vision for the company's future. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice full of conviction, "the world is changing. If we want to remain relevant and prosperous, we need to embrace this change. Diversity is not just a buzzword, it's a competitive advantage." He presented data showing how companies with diverse leadership tended to perform better in the market. He talked about how his and Olivia's story had attracted a wave of public support, improving the company's image among younger consumers. "Our foundation is not just philanthropy," he argued. "It's an investment in the future, in talents we might otherwise lose. in innovations that can emerge from diverse perspectives. By the end of the meeting, even the most skeptical board members were forced to reconsider their positions. Alexander's vision, combined with the positive coverage that was beginning to emerge about Olivia's press conference, had turned the tide. When Alexander returned to the mansion that evening, he found Olivia waiting for him on the balcony. Without saying a word, he wrapped her in a tight hug. "We did it," he whispered. "The board approved it. The foundation, our engagement, everything." Olivia pulled away slightly, her eyes shining. "And the press. I think we've finally managed to tell our story our way." They stood there, watching the sun set over San Francisco, feeling that they had overcome a crucial hurdle. The battle wasn't completely won. There would still be challenges ahead. But for the first time since their relationship came to light, they felt they were in control of their narrative. "You know," Alexander said softly, "with all this going on, we haven't even had time to think about wedding plans." Olivia laughed, a light, happy sound that made Alexander's heart fill with joy. "One step at a time, my love. One step at a time." As night fell over the city, Alexander and Olivia remained embraced, savoring this moment of victory. The road ahead was still uncertain, but they were ready to face it, together. The months that followed the creation of the Rothschild Foundation for Equality and Opportunity were a whirlwind of activity. Alexander and Olivia found themselves at the center of a transformation not only in their personal lives, but also in the world around them. It was a sunny Saturday morning when Olivia walked into Alexander's office in the mansion, carrying a pile of papers. She found him leaning over his laptop, reading glasses on the end of his nose. "More scholarship applications?" he asked, looking over his glasses with a tired but satisfied smile. Olivia nodded, placing the papers on the table. "Hundreds of them. The response has been incredible, Alexander. People from all corners of the country, with inspiring stories." She paused, noticing the thoughtful expression on his face. "What?" Alexander leaned back in his chair, taking off his glasses. "I've been thinking, what if we expanded the scope of the foundation?" Olivia sat on the edge of the table, puzzled. "What do you mean?" "Well," he began, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm, "we started with scholarships, right? But what if we could do more? Mentoring programs, startup incubators for entrepreneurs from underprivileged communities, partnerships with universities?" Olivia smiled, taking his hands in hers. "That sounds wonderful, Alexander, but it's a big undertaking. Are you sure we're ready for it?" He stood up, pulling her into a hug. "With you by my side, I'm ready for anything." At that moment, Margaret knocked on the open office door, an envelope in her hands. "Sorry to interrupt, lovebirds, but something has arrived that you'll want to see." She handed the envelope to Olivia, who opened it carefully. Her eyes widened as she read the contents. "It's an invitation," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "To the mayor's annual charity ball." Alexander frowned, confused. "But we always get this invitation. Why is that surprising?" Olivia swallowed. "Because this time, the invitation is addressed to both of us, as a couple." The significance of that simple gesture didn't go unnoticed. It was more than an invitation. It was a public recognition of their relationship by San Francisco's social elite. "Well," Alexander said softly, "it looks like we're finally being accepted." Olivia bit her lip nervously. "Alexander, I've never been to an event like this. What if I—" He interrupted her with a soft kiss. "You'll be amazing, as you always are. Besides," he added with a mischievous grin, "who better to teach me etiquette than the woman who's managed my house for years?" The weeks that followed were a mixture of preparations for the ball and hard work on the foundation's expansion. Olivia found herself torn between dance classes, dress fittings and meetings with potential partners for the foundation's new programs. Finally, the night of the ball arrived. The Rothschild mansion was abuzz, with Margaret running around helping with the final preparations. When Olivia came downstairs, Alexander, who was waiting for her in the entrance hall, was speechless. She looked stunning in a midnight blue silk dress, her auburn hair tied up in an elegant bun. "You look magnificent," he finally managed to say. Olivia blushed, nervously adjusting the strap of her dress. "Thank you. I still can't believe we're doing this." Alexander offered her his arm. "Remember, my love, no matter what happens tonight, we have each other, and that's all that matters." The charity ball was a spectacle of opulence and elegance. As they entered the ballroom, Alexander and Olivia felt all eyes on them. There was a moment of tense silence before the buzz of conversation began again. As the evening progressed, Olivia was surprised by the warm welcome from many of those present. Wives of politicians and businessmen approached, curious to meet the woman who had captured the heart of San Francisco's most coveted bachelor. In a quiet moment, while Alexander was talking to some investors, Olivia found herself face to face with Cassandra Beaumont, the socialite who had flirted with Alexander at the ball where it all began. "So," Cassandra said, her sugary tone barely concealing a hint of envy, "you must be feeling like Cinderella, aren't you?" Olivia smiled serenely. "Actually, Mrs. Beaumont, I feel like myself. Only now, I can finally be who I really am, without fear or pretense." Cassandra was momentarily speechless, clearly not expecting such an eloquent response. The evening reached its climax when the mayor took to the stage for his annual speech. To everyone's surprise, he called Alexander and Olivia to join him. "This year," the mayor announced, "we are delighted to highlight the outstanding work of the Rothschild Foundation for Equality and Opportunity. Alexander and Olivia have not only defied our expectations about love and marriage, but they are also using their platform to make a real difference in our community." The applause that followed was deafening. Alexander, with tears in his eyes, took the microphone. "Thank you all," he said, his voice laced with emotion, "but the real thanks go to this extraordinary woman next to me. Olivia, you've not only changed my life, but you're helping to change the world. I love you, and I can't wait to see what the future holds." As the crowd applauded again, Alexander turned to Olivia, taking her hands in his. "What do you think?" he whispered, just for her to hear. "We should make this moment even more memorable." Olivia stared at him, confused. "What do you mean?" With a smile, Alexander knelt down in front of her, taking a small velvet box out of his tuxedo pocket. The audience let out a collective sigh. "Olivia Thompson," he said, his voice laden with love and determination, "would you do me the honor of marrying me? Right here, right now, in front of everyone." The world seemed to stop for a moment. Olivia looked at the shiny ring in the box, at Alexander's hopeful face, and at the crowd eagerly awaiting her answer. With tears in her eyes and a beaming smile, she replied, "Yes, Alexander, 1,000 times yes." As the hall erupted in applause and congratulations, Alexander slid the ring onto Olivia's finger and pulled her into a passionate kiss. At that moment, all the doubts, all the obstacles they had faced seemed far away. They had come a long way since that fateful night in the mansion, and they still had a long way to go. But now, more than ever, they were ready to face the future, together. The rising sun was painting the San Francisco sky in shades of pink and gold when Olivia opened her eyes. She stretched gently, feeling the comforting weight of Alexander's arm around her. Today was the big day, their wedding. As she watched the sleeping man beside her, Olivia reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them here. From the fateful ball to the impulsive proposal at the charity ball, every moment had been a roller coaster of emotions and challenges. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Olivia? Are you awake, dear?" Margaret's voice sounded from the other side. "I'll be right there," Olivia replied softly, carefully disentangling herself from Alexander's embrace. In the kitchen, Margaret was preparing an elaborate breakfast. "I thought the bride would need some extra energy today," she said, with a warm smile. Olivia hugged the woman who had become like a mother to her. "Thank you, Margaret, for everything." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Hairdressers, makeup artists, and the wedding planner came in and out of the mansion, transforming it into the perfect venue for the intimate ceremony Alexander and Olivia had planned. While getting ready in her old bedroom, now transformed into a luxurious walk-in closet, Olivia was surprised by an unexpected visitor. Sophia Lawson, the journalist who had become a close friend, walked in with a beaming smile. "I was really hoping you'd come," Olivia said, hugging her. Sophia laughed. And miss the happy ending to the story I helped tell? Never. The two women chatted animatedly while Olivia got ready. Sophia shared the latest news. The article she had written about the Rothschild Foundation had won a journalism award, and love stories that defied social expectations were becoming increasingly common in the media. "You've really started to change, Olivia," Sophia said, her eyes shining with admiration. Olivia blushed slightly. "We just followed our hearts. The rest happened naturally." Outside, it was in the garden of the mansion, Alexander was waiting anxiously. The small group of guests, close friends, family, and some of the foundation's first beneficiaries chatted quietly, creating an atmosphere of joyful anticipation. As the music began to play, everyone turned to see Olivia walking down the makeshift aisle between the chairs. She looked stunning in a simple but elegant dress that highlighted her natural beauty. Her eyes, however, were fixed on Alexander, who was gazing at her with pure love and admiration. The justice of the peace, a middle-aged man with a gentle smile, began the ceremony. "We are gathered here today to celebrate not only the union of Alexander and Olivia, but also the triumph of love over prejudice and social expectations. These two have shown us that true love knows no barriers of class or status." Alexander and Olivia exchanged vows that were both deeply personal and universally touching. They spoke about trust, mutual respect, and their commitment to continue growing together. "Olivia," Alexander said, his voice tinged with emotion, "you taught me the true meaning of partnership. With you, I am the best version of myself. I promise to be by your side through every challenge we face, to celebrate every victory, and to build a bright future together." Olivia, with tears in her eyes, replied, "Alexander, you've shown me that love can overcome any obstacle. I promise to be your partner in every way, to support your dreams as you support mine, and to work every day to deserve the incredible love we share." When the judge declared them man and wife, the small assembly erupted in applause and cheers. Alexander pulled Olivia into a passionate kiss, sealing their union and their promise of a shared future. The reception that followed was a joyful and relaxed celebration. Alexander and Olivia danced, laughed and chatted with their guests, each an important part of their journey. In a quiet moment, the couple retreated to a corner of the garden, watching the party from a distance. "So, Mrs. Rothschild," Alexander teased softly, "how are you feeling?" Olivia smiled, resting her head on his shoulder, happy, complete, and a little scared of what lies ahead. Alexander hugged her tighter. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together. We have a foundation to expand, lives to impact, and a family to start," Olivia added hesitantly. Alexander pulled away slightly, looking her in the eye with a mixture of surprise and joy. "Olivia, are you—" She nodded, a radiant smile lighting up her face. "I found out yesterday. I wanted to wait for the perfect moment to tell you." Alexander spun her around in the air, laughing with pure happiness. When he put her back down, his eyes were shining with tears of joy. "A family," he whispered, placing his hand gently on Olivia's still flat belly. "Our own family." As the sun set over San Francisco, casting a golden glow over the party, Alexander and Olivia stood in each other's arms, contemplating the future that was opening up before them. They had overcome prejudices, defied expectations, and in the process, not only found true love, but also inspired others to follow their hearts. Their journey was far from over. There would be new challenges, new adventures, and no doubt some obstacles along the way. But with the love they shared and the support of the community they had built, Alexander and Olivia were ready to face anything the future might bring. As they walked back to the party, holding hands and hearts full of hope, they knew that this was not an ending, but just the beginning of a new and exciting chapter in their lives. A love story that would continue to inspire and make a difference in the world, one day at a time. If this story touched your heart, then don't forget to leave a like. Use the super thanks located just below the video to directly support the channel and help create more amazing content. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. Now don't miss the next incredible story that's appearing on your screen. I greatly appreciate your support and hope to see you soon. Thank you for watching.